Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching.
We agreed to help you, High Counselor Tau. But understand this, Earth operates on its own terms, not yours. The silence that followed was not peaceful. Along the curved chamber walls, where each delegate's dais floated in perfect radial symmetry, subtle movements betrayed the composure expected of a council summit. Gauch vocal folds cinched with quiet pressure. Silk refractors dimmed to protective hues. A corps general's claws flexed once across the guardrail, before stilling. At the center, the high seat remained still. An armored monolith carved from obsidian alloy sat above a basin of starlight. There, unmoving, High Counselor Tau observed Earth's representative with the precise calm of a species bred for order. But General Valen, you must understand that the Council— General Udric Valen did not wait. He turned, smooth and without flourish, boots sounding sharp on the polished floor. The weight of the chamber shifted with him, as though the air adjusted to his movement. A few heads turned, slow, uncertain. None dared interrupt. He was halfway to the outer threshold when Tau's voice followed him. "General Valen." Valen stopped, mid-stride. He didn't look back. "If Earth's contribution is to be recognized formally," Tau said, each word shaped as if under glass, "then its terms will be honored. Autonomy will be granted. You will retain full authority over your deployments." Valen waited a second longer than protocol required, then nodded once, sharply. He resumed walking. "Let it be recorded," Tau continued, addressing the full chamber now. "Earth enters the conflict on its own terms." The declaration was final, binding. The weight of it settled into the room like gravity. The chamber began to move again. Not speech, movement. Mandibles tensed. Refractor colors shifted again, some toward alarm spectrum. The track envoy blinked slowly, feathers rising in stiff layers. No one spoke in protest, but no one looked pleased either. At the great threshold, as the council doors hissed open, General Valen paused. He glanced over his shoulder, not at Tau, but at the rows of silent delegates beyond him. Better not ask what is coming next. And then he was gone. Outside the chamber, his footsteps echoed alone. Two honor guards stood flanking the private corridor, their armor etched with ceremonial glyphs none on Earth could read. Valen ignored them. In the lift, once sealed and descending, he reached back with two fingers and pressed lightly beneath the collar of his uniform, just below the base of his neck. A synthetic layer folded back, revealing the smooth surface of a comport embedded in the skin. "Council agreed," he said. "Prepare for war." Behind him, the council chamber remained under diplomatic seal. Several delegates had already disconnected, others lingered. The core remained. He turned toward the high seat, voice gravel over stone. "You should not have agreed to this." Tau did not move. "I did not agree," he said. "I accepted." A slow vocal tremor vibrated through the Gauch delegate's folds, low, like a prayer gone sour. Earth's methods are not compatible with order. Tau's eyes, hidden behind layered mandible plates, never blinked. "Order does not matter if we do not survive." Neither delegate replied. Tau raised one digit. The session's seal light chimed once, cool, sterile, unceremonious. Above them, the great chamber's lights dimmed by 2 degrees. And then there was silence. The lab was dark, lit by a single arc light mounted above the platform. No overhead glare, no idle machinery humming in the corners. Everything in the room was where it needed to be, surgical, sterile, built for him and him alone. Dr. Elias Roques leaned in, breath held, scalpel-thin connector probe in hand, guiding it down along the curvature of the spinal access collar. The diagnostic port had fused again. TH9 sat rigid in the upright harness, helmet in place, Arms relaxed across the stabilization rails. Not strapped in, not powered down. Still, the 12 rigs stood in a crescent formation around the perimeter, each containing a motionless figure inside a containment cradle. Identical armor, identical posture. 12 breathing weapons sealed in vacuum-tight capsules. 12 designations etched cleanly on the base plates. TH1, TH2, TH3, until TH12. The temperature in the room was regulated precisely to Rox's preferences. A little cold. Not enough to discomfort, just enough to keep skin alert and hands sharp. He slid the probe into the cranial port and began to test relay tension along the cognitive feedback array. It clicked twice. Too slow. He adjusted torque manually, twisted a micro-thread connector until it seated clean. He preferred to do this by hand. There were drones for it, automated diagnostic arms, remote assist neurosync tools. But machines made decisions. He made corrections. A soft green pulse spread across the back of the helmet. Neural handshake verified. Still perfect, Rox muttered, voice low and even. A retinal sync flash passed behind the visor, not visible to the outside eye, but he saw it on the monitor. He logged the values. Threat priority delay, 0.2 seconds. Retention purge status, nominal. Emotional dampening loop, active. Target acquisition smoothing, 97.4%. Excellent. He shut the panel. The artificial dermal seal closed with a hiss, reabsorbing into the backplate. 2 fingers tapped the final lock sequence, and the rig reset. As he stood, a soft kinetic chirp sounded from the floor outside the central ring. Bootsteps. Heavy. Measured. He didn't turn. He knew who it was. "You said they weren't ready," came General Adric Valen's voice. Rox finished his checklist before speaking. "I said they'd never be ready for peacetime." Valen stepped into the light. Uniform precise. No insignia, as always. Earth's war face didn't need medals, only resolve. The 2 men regarded each other with the tension of people who had been right for too long. The Council approved the deployment. They agreed that Earth had autonomy. That's not the same. It is now. I made it clear. Valen turned slightly, looking past Rox toward the containment rigs. They loomed like tombstones. "We buried them too long." "You buried them. I've been maintaining them." "And for what?" Valen asked. "So we'd never have to use them?" Rox was silent. "Vosen's edge fell yesterday," Valen continued. "All planetary comms lost. Core biometric signatures terminated. That's 1.3 million lives. Gone. It is just a matter of time until they come for us." Krexel swarm saturation? Maximum. Ground conversion started within 2 hours of breach. "We'll need orbital cleansing if we want to reclaim the zone," Raka said flatly. "We don't want it back," Valen replied. "We want them to stop multiplying." There was no sarcasm, no frustration, only planning. Rox moved back to TH9 and pressed 2 keys on the side of the helmet, test pulses. The head twitched. Perfect response time. He narrowed his eyes. 1 microsecond delay. Not enough to compromise, but enough to log. "Command node remains viable," Rox said. "Not optimal." "Viable is all I need. I'm ordering deployment," Valen said. "Full Theta Black package. Mission ready in 36 hours. Rox tapped into the biometric layer. Readouts spilled down the screen. He zoomed in on TH9's threat prediction loop. There it was. Subject, Elias Rox. Threat, 0.6% predicted aggression. Resolved, 0.0%. Classified, non-hostile. That wasn't supposed to be there. The operative had flagged him, momentarily. Not enough to act, but enough to notice. He cleared the log without comment. TH9 will lead, Rox said. Pattern fidelity remains highest. Neural baseline is the cleanest in the squad. Then wake them. Valen turned to go. General, Rox said. Valen paused. Do you regret this? No. Not even what they are? They're what we needed, Valen said. The galaxy thinks war is about fleets. We know better. Rox nodded. Then I'll begin the sync cycle. As Valen stepped through the exit corridor, he spoke without turning. Make sure they remember who built them. Alone again, Rox approached the terminal beside TH9. Behind him, 11 other rigs waited in silence. He keyed in the authorization manually. No biometrics, no voice ID, just code. THETA Black Sync 1 activate. A soft whine filled the air, barely audible. Each rig began to hum in sequence. One by one, helm lights flickered to life behind black visors. No faces, no movement, just presence. Command node, TH9, online. All units, nominal. Rox didn't pause. Didn't even adjust his stance. He just watched the system come alive. The Krexil didn't give warnings. They arrived as signal blackouts, as heat blooms where cities used to be. Damaris Fold fell in 17 hours. The Council's forward observation post, Station Vectal 3, had been relaying swarm pattern data from orbit until the Krexil broke their final perimeter and began tearing through the last barricades like skin. The Silk commander on site activated distress protocol, pushing a full-spectrum burst across neutral channels. The message that left her lips was clipped, desperate. We require reinforcement. Immediate. Council forces are... A shriek in the background. Organic metal on metal. They're inside. Transmission cut. For 32 minutes, there was only static. Then, 12 impact signatures entered the atmosphere. No identification. No transponder codes. Just a series of kinetic drops, falling at terminal velocity, glowing red-hot from the burn. Council defense crews locked weapons, but too late. By the time they recalibrated fire control, the objects had already slammed into the ravaged surface of Damaris Fold like gods without wings. 12 craters, 12 upright pods, and silence. The first pod hissed open. Inside, TH9 stepped forward. His armor was matte, featureless, no insignia, no lights. His weapon was magnetically locked to his spine, retrieved with a flick of one hand, already hot, already live. To his left, TH4 moved to high ground without a word. To his right, TH6 sprinted toward the broken remains of a structure, embedding themselves in the rubble like they'd been there for hours. No one gave orders. The Krexil were already coming. The swarm broke through the smoke, metallic limbs clicking, ocular ports flaring with heat signatures. They moved as one organism, each unit connected by swarm code. Each step mirrored the last, each angle perfect. The first wave charged, spear-point mandibles extended, four-limb blades twitching with anticipation. TH9 didn't raise his weapon. He let them close. At 5 meters, he stepped left, raised one hand, and fired into the ground. The detonation was surgical. A buried ordnance, perfectly placed. 6 Krexil went airborne, shredded mid-lunge. Before they hit the ground, TH5 was already moving past them, silent, efficient, planting a signal disruptor on the back of a twitching carapace. The device pinged twice. Krexil within a 50-meter radius stopped moving. Their coordination faltered. The second wave didn't pause. They adapted, surging forward on new channels. That's when TH10 rose from underneath the rubble, blade in hand. He had buried himself prior to engagement. First strike opened the neck joint of a swarm alpha. Second strike removed the comms node from a secondary unit. Third was unneeded. The rest were already breaking formation. Then, TH5 took a plasma strike across the side of the helmet. The blow spun him mid-step, slammed him into the wreckage of a collapsed structure. For a moment, there was stillness. Then, movement. He rose. Slowly. The left half of his visor was gone. Molten edges curled back, revealing burned synthetic mesh, fractured dermal tissue, and a human eye. Blood trickled from the corner. He didn't blink, didn't speak. He just moved forward, blade drawn, back into formation, as if nothing had happened. Back on the orbital feed, aboard the Council observation cruiser, 3 diplomats watched in frozen silence. Their weapons teams had been watching the surface for the swarm kill rate ratio to rise. It had. Too fast. Too clean. One of them leaned forward, mandibles trembling. They are humans? No one answered. On screen, TH3 walked into the center of a Krexil formation that had lost cohesion. The swarm tried to surround him. He knelt, tapped a command node on his gauntlet. A series of shortwave bursts detonated across their flank, using their own sonar pulses against them. The Krexil screamed. That wasn't supposed to happen. In a control room on Lunar Anchor, Dr. Elias Rox monitored the feed from a secure chair, eyes locked on neural telemetry. Pain spikes registered from TH5, helmet cracked on one side, blood seeping into the collar lining. Still moving. Still executing protocols. Neural sync intact, Rox muttered. Motor compensation active. Conscious override engaged. General Valen stood beside him, arms folded. No resistance? Not yet. The swarm doesn't understand what it's fighting. They will. On the ground, TH9 stood atop a mound of Krexil wreckage, armor dripping with fluid that hissed on contact with air. He turned slightly as TH2 emerged from the smoke, his left arm gone, severed at the elbow. No hesitation. He tossed down a flare beacon, marking the kill zone perimeter. No one spoke. There was no celebration, only motion, recovery, reset. At the edge of the battlefield, something crawled. A single Krexil unit, limb crushed, head scorched, dragging itself toward a ravine. TH9 walked slowly behind it, not hunting, executing. He stopped 5 meters back, raised his weapon, one shot, center mass, instant. The creature spasmed, then lay still. Then he turned and walked away. By dawn, only smoke remained over Damaris Fold. The heat signatures of the battle were already beginning to cool. Krexil fluids evaporated in thin blue tendrils. The Council's forward base, or what was left of it, lay cracked and gutted beneath the scorched remains of its orbital platform. The Theta Black units moved silently through the wreckage, checking, confirming, erasing. They didn't speak, didn't collect trophies, didn't pause to count the dead. They simply made sure there would be no movement. And then, there was none. A silence followed, different from the stillness that preceded it. This one had weight, like something had lifted, or retreated. From above, Council observation feeds cycled through the aftermath in tight-loop scans. A Hilari technician leaned forward over the main display, his silk-like tendrils trembling faintly as he zoomed in on the retreat vectors. "They're pulling back," he whispered. No one responded at first. The Krexil didn't pull back. That wasn't part of any known swarm pattern. But there it was. Swarm activity, once concentrated in waves of perfect synchronization, was now fragmenting, splitting. Nodes abandoned. Perimeter drones left inactive. It wasn't panic. It was something worse. Tactical migration. In the command center aboard Earth's operations vessel Harrow, General Valen stood beside Dr. Rox, watching a real-time sweep of the region. The Krexil were leaving Damaris Fold, routing themselves through suborbital tunnels, shielded crawl lanes, even abandoning healthy bodies that could have continued to fight. Why? One of the alien liaisons asked, voice trembling through an open comm channel. Why would they leave a combat zone they were winning yesterday? They weren't winning today, Rox said flatly, eyes locked on telemetry. It makes no sense, the liaison insisted. They don't fear. They don't break. We've seen this before. If they swarm to extinction. Always. Valen didn't look away from the screen. They didn't break. Then what is this? They adapted. On the surface, TH9 reached the edge of the primary breach zone. His boots hissed against hot debris. The only remaining heat signature came from his squad mates and the faint, boiling remains of infected atmosphere. Behind him, TH2 stepped over a collapsed Krexil node structure, still pulsing faintly with residual energy. Without pausing, he dropped a compact explosive charge, triggered it, and moved on. The structure detonated behind them. Elimination. Total. Back aboard Harrow, a scan drone returned from its sweep of the deeper breach tunnels. The data feed scrolled across Rox's screen. He narrowed his eyes. Nutrient pattern density. Off scale. Heat lattice mesh showing growth signatures across all sublayers. Carbon intake spiking in soil deposits. He leaned back, squinted his eyes. They were turning the planet. Valen's jaw tensed. How fast? At the current biomass replication rate, Rox typed. Ran the calculation. 3 weeks, he said. Then the atmosphere would have shifted. The crust would break down, and Krexil would enter second phase breeding. Survivable? Not if we'd waited another day. Containable? Only because we stopped it now. Valen stared at the planet's surface on the display. The blackened craters. The melted airlocks. The silence. Good. Later, at the edge of the briefing chamber, a Silk Council observer paced in short circles. He paused, looking at the holoscreen, then back to Valen. They weren't just beaten, he said. They withdrew. They encountered something outside their model, Valen replied. The observer looked uneasy. What do you call that? Tactical mismatch. No, the Silk said. That's not what I mean. What do you call them? He motioned to the screen where Theta Black stood like statues, still and silent. They're not soldiers. Valen didn't blink. No, they're better than that. Dr. Rox interrupted with a new data packet. He turned the table display so Valen could see. Redirect confirmed. Krexil swarm signatures are re-emerging in the Garad system, one of the Hilari colonies. Lightly defended. Agricultural world. Minimal orbital defense. They're rerouting the entire swarm? Valen asked. No, just the strain that survived this engagement. Valen nodded, which means they learned something. They didn't learn it correctly, Rox said. They learned to avoid. For now. Silence passed between them. Then Valen looked back at the silent Theta Blackfeet. 12 armored monsters in a half-lit hangar, all present, all silent. None spoke. None moved unless deployed. He tapped the side of the table. Slowly. Do we have drop capacity? Rox didn't even nod. Always. They weren't born. They were removed. No mothers, no fathers, no inheritance. Only replication. Only control. The project that would later be classified under the designation Theta Black was never meant to exist. Not in public record. Not in whispers. Not even in war doctrine. For nearly a decade, its name appeared nowhere, buried beneath sovereign defense budgets, hidden in line items no one questioned, compartmentalized so deeply that even Earth's high command only knew its outcome, not its process. 12 subjects, 12 codes, 12 beings grown in orbital biotubes that mimicked the human womb, nutrient-fed, zero-G balanced, and neuro-linked to synthetic sensory arrays before they had hands to move. Consciousness was not cultivated. It was engineered. The developmental phase began in silence. They heard nothing, saw nothing. Their first input was pain, controlled, measured, intentional. It shaped the cortex. They were conditioned in orbit, weightless, under blackout cycles that denied them normal circadian rhythm. Psychological cohesion was never the objective, only cognitive survivability. Could the mind remain intact without emotional architecture? Could a human nervous system survive war without becoming unpredictable? Dr. Elias Raukes found the answer. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a weapons contractor. He was an architect of necessity, one who believed the galaxy's future depended not on diplomacy, but on preemption. Not cold, not power-hungry, but fanatically practical. Like a man who saw the galaxy burning long before anyone else and decided to build a firebreak made of monsters. He monitored fetal neural activity with the same reverence others gave to first words, adjusted cortical formation with software injections before the subjects ever drew breath. If a synapse behaved outside optimal parameters, it was rerouted. If a neural junction refused to suppress stress response, it was surgically deadened. By the time the 12 units reached muscular autonomy, they had already learned to fight. In vacuum, under duress, under silence. And when the project's first live fire trial came, Rox watched Theta 3 cave in a reinforced blast door with his bare hands. Theta 7 stopped his own bleeding by crushing the artery until the muscle seized and turned necrotic. Theta 9 tore a synthetic target's limb off, then repurposed it as a club without command input. None of them spoke. Not once. Not even when the pain threshold was surpassed. Rockies stood in the gallery chamber and recorded the moment. Not with admiration, with confirmation. "These aren't humans in uniform," he said into his log. "They're tools, assets that sometimes don't follow orders once deployed." A pause. But they always finish. They were fed intravenously, rested in immersion tanks. When idle, they remained motionless, not asleep, just still, like sealed coffins with breath inside. When Earth Command demanded proof the program was viable, Rox didn't send the Theta to a test range. He sent them to war. Traylon Scar was a Council-protected frontier world, already swarming with Krexil infestation. Officially, Earth wasn't authorized to intervene. But Earth didn't ask. 12 drop pods, 12 codes, no fanfare, no clearance. Just silence. What landed wasn't a military unit. It was a prelude to extinction. In 14 hours, the Krexil retreated. Not defeated, disoriented. They didn't understand what had hit them. The Council issued formal complaints. Diplomatic outrage. Another example of human unpredictability, they called it. A reckless, unsanctioned violation of peacekeeping protocol. But what the Council never understood, not then, not now, was that this wasn't just an operation. It was the first test. The first time Earth's black file monsters were unleashed. And they won. That's why Earth stopped building armies. It started building outcomes. Present day, Rox moved through the diagnostic chamber aboard Harrow, his gloved fingers trailing across the biometric interface. He had requested 1 hour of observation before sending the Theta to battle at Gorad system. All 12 rigs were active, neural oscillations stable, emotion suppression at 99.7%. Except one. He paused. TH9. Still upright, still powered. But there was an anomaly. Subtle. In the decision feedback loop. A repeat ping. He zoomed in. Pattern echo. Source, undefined. Stimulus, none. Response, delay 0.4 seconds. Tag, residual. Residual from what? There was no trigger command, no threat input, just recognition. But of what? Rockies highlighted the line of code and set a passive monitor. He did not delete the data. He didn't log the anomaly either. Just watched. The others didn't show it. Not TH2, not TH6. Their neural loops were clean. No drift. No hesitation. But 9 had paused. Not malfunctioned. Not glitched. Paused. That was new. In the observation dome above the chamber, Valen stood with arms folded, watching the silent squad through reinforced glass. "You've reviewed the new reports?" he asked without turning. "Yes," Rox replied. "Breeding has begun on Gorad Prime. The Hilari are evacuating. They won't make it in time." "They won't have to. Same drop pattern?" "Yes." Valen nodded. Send them. Raux nodded. As the deployment sequence initialized, the Theta black rigs began to unlock one by one, helmets sealed, visors engaged, neural compression triggered. But inside TH9's chamber, just before full blackout, one eye micro-adjusted. Tiny, imperceptible, but real. A twitch. And behind the black visor, an unspoken question surfaced. It didn't come from the mission. It didn't come from code. It came from somewhere else. Something deeper. A flicker of something that remembered being human. It passed. But Raokis had seen it. He keyed in a private log line. Subject 9 pattern drift. Watch for identity recall. He didn't speak it aloud. But as the pods locked in for launch, he stared at the rig and said, quietly, "You weren't born. You were made. But that doesn't mean you stayed that way. In the end, you are still human, only without a soul." The Krexil didn't invade anymore. They consumed. The surface of Garad Prime was already gone by the time Earth Command authorized deployment. Once, it had been Hilari jungle, vertical canopy towers woven with organic crystal, rivers that sang through the stones, air thick with pollens that shimmered in violet sun. Now, it was something else entirely. Metallic fungus had rooted through the soil like claws. The forests had become filamented husks, twisted with hive matter. Egg bulbs pulsed on the skin of broken buildings, and the rivers had turned black, not with water, but breeding fluid. Krexil spores floated in the atmosphere like ash after a funeral. From the orbital command deck aboard Harrow, Dr. Elias Raukes gave no speech. He simply keyed in a single word on the deployment interface. Eradicate. 12 drop pods launched in sequence. They fell without fanfare, slicing the clouds apart like warheads. Within each pod, Theta Black units waited in full tactical seal, visors dimmed, minds already syncing with surface telemetry. Environmental readouts scrolled in front of their eyes. Acidic air pockets, thermal instability, spore exposure probability. None of it mattered. The Krexil were not meant to be survived. They were meant to be destroyed. 5 seconds before impact, each unit triggered its counter-mesh shield, a skin of electromagnetic arcs pulsing across their armor, designed to vaporize anything organic that attempted contact. The swarm had learned how to latch onto flesh. This time, they would learn how it felt to burn. Ground impact registered like an earthquake. The drop zone erupted. Krexil larvae, scattered across the surface in writhing waves, immediately surged toward the newcomers. They met walls of electricity. The first wave died screaming, or whatever passed for screaming in a species without lungs. The second wave climbed over the corpses, only to meet monofilament blades. Arms were sheared, carapaces shattered. Theta moved like predators inside a vacuum, neither speaking nor stopping. TH5 led the western flank. TH9 took point. Together, they cleaved a corridor through the breeder tunnels. But the swarm adapted quickly. They always did. A detonation of corrosive fluid from beneath the surface sent chunks of hive matter into the air. 2 Theta units took partial damage, but stabilized. Then came the real strike, a detonation bloom from under TH5. Krexil had mined the lower tunnels. It blew a 1/4 ton of earth upward and shattered a breeder nest. TH5 was caught in the collapse. The fall didn't kill him. The second blast did. His telemetry spiked, then dropped. Armor integrity compromised. Lower body crushed. Respiratory sink. Terminal. TH9 moved before the command node even adjusted. He altered course, ignoring the perimeter formation. Through ash and acid, he carved a direct path to the breach zone. He found 5 in a shallow crater, half covered in irradiated dust. His hand still gripped his weapon. His helmet was cracked. Blood vented through the seals in rhythmic pulses. 5 turned his head slightly. Directive complete. Termination acceptable. 9 reached down and locked his arm under 5's shoulder brace, dragging him free of the crater. Internal motors groaned. The countermesh flickered and reignited. No orders had been given to retrieve him. There were no recovery protocols for a fallen Theta. TH9 brought him out anyway. The battle raged. Electric arcs lit the sky like storms. Krexel larvae swarmed, but the Theta did not retreat. They turned every inch of the battlefield into a forge. When the breeder tower collapsed under sustained bombardment, the shockwave knocked out 2 hives. The nests began to go dark. By hour 7, Garad Prime was no longer a battlefield. It was a grave. The Theta units gathered at Extraction Point Delta. 11 remained upright. TH9 stood apart, holding the lifeless body of 5 in both arms. His armor had blackened around the chest plate, shielding dented where he'd absorbed the second blast. He didn't stagger. He didn't kneel. He simply stood. The Hilari emerged after the slaughter, pale and crystalline, their long limbs moving with care. Dozens, then hundreds, filtering out of underground bunkers and collapse shelters. Their cities were gone, their world poisoned, but they were alive, because of humans. The Hilari looked at the Theta Black units not with terror, but with reverence. One of them approached, an elder with fractured facial plates, and bowed low. His voice was thin, but clear. They saved us. The humans sent their angels of war. No Theta acknowledged the words. They weren't built to. Hours later, inside Harrow's extraction bay, Rock stood with arms folded, boots locked to the deck, watching the boarding platform. The Theta emerged one by one, silent, walking in perfect rhythm. Last came TH9, still carrying 5's remains. He crossed the deck alone. The others moved to decontamination. 9 did not follow. Raukes said nothing. Neither did Valen, standing at the back of the platform. When 9 reached the medical platform, he laid the body down carefully. Not like cargo, not like trash. Like memory. A pause. 2 seconds. 3. Then, he spoke. The voice wasn't clean. It came through static, layered with digital stutter. But it was unmistakably speech. Can you bring him back? The question hung in the chamber like a fracture in steel. Valen stiffened. Rox blinked once. No words came in return. No one else heard it. There was no witness. Only the man who built the monsters. And the man who sent them to die. The war is over. The voice of High Counselor Tau filled the spire chamber. Each word carried the weight of ceremony, though his tone remained calm, measured, almost reverent. General Adric Valen stood beneath the haloed emitter ring of the Grand Assembly. No guards, no cameras, no banners. Just 2 survivors in a hall that had seen too many endings. The Krexel withdrew beyond extragalactic trace 6 days ago, Tau said. Sensors confirm no active conversion patterns, no breeding colonies, no atmosphere contamination. Valen gave a slow nod. Then it's finished. Tau's antennae shifted once, a small gesture of agreement. Some among us call it victory, others survival. Both sound expensive, Valen said quietly. What's not in dispute, Tau continued, is that Garad Prime still stands. Because we made sure it did. And the Hilari are grateful. We did what we could, Valen replied, voice softening. No one fights for gratitude. Perhaps not, Tau said, but gratitude remembers. The chamber lights dimmed, gold reflections glancing across the curved walls. The Council has voted, Tau said. Effective immediately, Earth is to be granted full strategic integration into the Galactic Assembly. Your sovereignty remains, as does your seat at this table. Valen inclined his head. That's more than I expected. It's what you earned. We all did, Valen said. It is often said that when peace returns, truth follows, Tau offered. Truth never left, Valen murmured. We just stopped arguing with it. The emitter ring dimmed fully, leaving the chamber in soft shadow. "Congratulations, General," Tao said. Valen nodded and left. Inside Harrow's diagnostic sector, Dr. Elias Raukes stood alone before the cremation bay, watching the final authorization window blink on the terminal. No alarms, no movement, only the hum of sterilization fans and the pale white glow of post-operation light. Terminate remains. TH5, protocol, incineration, confirmation, key, input. He entered the sequence manually. The chamber locked with a hiss. There was no ceremony, no pause for reflection. Just a clean, irreversible process. The body disintegrated at molecular precision. No fragments, no data, no soul. Rox looked at the biometric feed out of habit. 12 identifiers were still logged, 11 green, 1 dark. He closed the window. Behind him, TH9 sat in the observation chair, not powered down, not in calibration, just sitting. No THETA had ever been observed doing it. The chair was meant for diagnostics. He wasn't plugged in. He hadn't moved in over an hour. Rox approached him without speaking. TH9's armor was still scorched from Garad Prime. The vent seals at the neck were bubbled from heat damage. Under normal conditions, protocol would call for deconstruction and full neurosync disassembly. But Raukes hadn't given that order, because something was happening. Something no manual covered. He keyed open the neural feedback channel and checked the logs. Subject, TH9. Status, active. Neural recursion, looping. Emotional filter, partially suppressed. Identity stability, index, 73.6%. Vocalization. Index, null. The recursion loop had been running since they returned. Not a glitch, not decay, but a loop with no source, as if 9 was remembering. Rox stepped beside him. No orders, no commands, just presence. "He's not coming back," Rox said softly. No response. "I tried. There was enough left for a scan, but the neural shell was fragmented. That blast severed the base layer memory. I couldn't reconstruct him, even if I wanted to." Still nothing. He was already gone before you pulled him out. The voice modulator in TH9's chest clicked once, then silence again. Rox glanced at the telemetry feed. His hands were trembling, micro-tremors. Not fatigue, not stress, suppressed motor drift. "You weren't programmed to react like this," Rox muttered. "None of you were." He paused. "And you weren't supposed to sit." That word hung in the air. Still, no movement. Then the voice actuator clicked again. A soft, static bent whine. It wasn't a glitch. It was pre-speech calibration. And then, finally, he spoke. "What kind of species are we?" Rox froze. The words weren't loud, weren't clear, but they were spoken. And they weren't code. The man who had built monsters now stood in front of one trying to be something else. He didn't answer. Because for the first time, he didn't know how. The war was over, but Harrow Station never slowed. Repairs were silent, footsteps slower, lights dimmer. But the machines still hummed. Systems still blinked. Inside a sealed observation room above the launch base, General Udric Valen stood beside Dr. Elias Raukes. No words. Not at first. Below them, 11 THETA units stood perfectly still, armor intact, visors dim. One cradle empty. The 12th was not gone, just damaged. "He hasn't spoken in days," Rox said quietly. Valen didn't turn. "Is he functional?" "Yes." "Then he's not broken." Raukes sighed. "He's divided." Valen finally looked at him. "Explain." The doctor tapped a small control on the glass. A single feed window expanded. Not surveillance, not metrics, just a still image. TH9, seated in the diagnostic chamber, unarmored, unmoving. I told him everything, Rock said, about his creation, the chamber, the zero-G conditioning, the wetware, all of it. Valen's jaw tightened. And? He understood, but he didn't accept it. Another silence passed. He asked me why we gave him eyes. Valen raised an eyebrow. To see targets? Rauques shook his head. No, he asked why we gave him eyes if not to see himself. Valen said nothing. Below, the remaining THETA units didn't shift, didn't acknowledge their missing number. They weren't programmed for grief. They weren't programmed for anything except execution. 9 had deviated, not just in action, but in purpose. What are you going to do? Valen asked. Rox didn't answer. He was already walking. Inside the diagnostic chamber, TH9 sat in the same chair he hadn't left for 3 days. No armor, just the suit layer, matte black, fused with dermal anchors. His head was bowed, not powered down, just still. Rox entered without announcement. 9 didn't move. The chamber sealed behind them. I'm not going to reset you, Rox said. That's not what this is. 9's voice was barely audible. They don't change. No, Rox said. They weren't built to. And I was? No, Rox said again. You weren't either. 9 finally looked up. But I did. The words held no pride, no confusion, just a kind of tired truth. Rox sat across from him. You saved TH5, he said, when every instinct told you not to. You brought him back, knowing he was already gone. You asked questions you were never supposed to form. 9 didn't speak. You're not malfunctional, Rox said. You're just evolving. 9 nodded slowly. I thought I was a weapon. You were. I thought I was a man. You were never meant to be. 9 looked away. So what am I now? Rox didn't answer at first. His hand hovered over the console, hesitation breaking through the precision. I don't know the answers, 9, he said finally, but I'll find them. And when I do, I'll bring you back, without the pain. Then he keyed the sequence on his wrist. A soft chime sounded from the opposite wall. A stasis pod unfolding with quiet hydraulics. No alarms, no countdowns. Just the hum of engineered silence. 9 stood, no resistance. No protest, just acceptance. At the edge of the chamber, he paused. If I wake, who will I be? Rox stepped forward, looked him in the eyes. Someone who deserves to ask that. 9 entered the pod. Lay down. The seals folded in. Blue frost spread across the inner glass. A heartbeat later, he was gone. Not dead. Not erased. Just waiting. Above, General Valen stood alone in the observation dome, looking down at the empty chair, the empty room. He didn't speak. There was nothing left to say.
Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind. Or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's worth a look. Oh, and one last thing. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.